Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to the Muslim Game Changers podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories from the best and brightest of the Muslim world. I'm your Hussein, and I'm very excited to take you on a journey of discovery featuring high-profile Muslim leaders from all around the globe. Another episode, another country, today with the United Kingdom. Super grateful to have with us our guest, Tafhim Uddin. Tafhim, our brother, is a senior consultant with over 5 years of experience in the industry. What really sets him apart is his eagerness to always be seeking out new learning opportunities. Fun fact, like 99% of the population in London, he loves football. We're excited to have him on the show today to share his insights with our listeners. Assalamu alaikum, Tafhim. How are you doing today?
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm very well, Shaheen. How are you?
Excellent, alhamdulillah. So grateful. Just for a little note to the audience, it's the middle of summer and Tafhim has accepted to be among us. So super grateful. How is London, by the way? Is it empty like Paris or is it different?
I think summertime it tends to be, quite packed. I would say a lot of tourists. The weather usually, not all the time, but usually is quite nice around this time of year. So you get a lot of people outside, a lot of tourists and stuff like that.
Yeah, honestly, living in big towns has its pros and cons, and people, are dreaming of like London, Paris, New York, etc. I think Paris less in the recent years. For me, when the city is packed with tourists, I tell myself I feel anxious. I thought maybe you could relate, or maybe you prefer when it's crowded, you meet a lot of people.
I think living in London, I'd say definitely used to like the hustle and bustle, like it's very busy all the time. And for me, to be honest, I do quite like it. I think it keeps you on your toes. So.
Amazing. Tafhim, my brother, let's begin with some basics. Can you tell us where were you born, if you were born in London or elsewhere? And also a little other type of question. It's where did your family come from? Are they like born also in the UK or are they coming from another country?
Okay, so myself, I was born in London, specifically East London. So I guess for those who don't know, East London is like predominantly Bangladeshi community, like a very big Bangladeshi community. So a lot of people from Bangladesh had moved over there sort of in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So I was born in London. My parents, however, were born in Bangladesh, and they kind of came over in the late 80s or so and settled in East London. Yeah, so again, East London being a predominantly sort of South Asian and Bangladeshi community in East London.
It's true that at each time I try to visit London, and I would advise everyone which is in Europe or elsewhere which would like to visit London, my first reflex is to go in Bengali town. Everything is halal, the food is cheap, it's good. I was wondering also for your family, what motivated them to go to the UK? Did they have any type of, maybe you ignore this, but did they think of any other country, or for them it was clear the UK was the place to be because they speak English, etc.?
Yeah, and I think it's also because there was like sort of other family who had moved already to the UK, so it kind of made sense to move over there as well.
A last question on the topic is I might not know as much of the Bengali community as others, maybe some of our listeners. How would you describe, the Bengali community to the others? Is it a community that's, is a business type of community where they try to make small businesses? Is it solidarity which binds them together? How would you describe the Bengali community to anyone who might not know?
I would say, definitely on the topic of businesses, you'd see a lot of, especially again, in and around East London, probably in other areas of the country as well, where we kind of tried to set up our own little businesses, but not just sort of small businesses, even ranging to like people trying to, build bigger businesses, stuff like that, and really trying to, kind of drive them forward and make a living and be able to provide for their family and so on and so forth. So I'd say definitely that part of it is quite prevalent, especially in the Bengulu community. And then other than that, to be honest, it's just, I would like to think we're quite welcoming as well.
I think modesty is something I remarked because I talked to a brother from Australia, actually, who is
Hmm.
Bengali also.
Oh,
And I
nice.
noticed, like, I don't know if it's part of your education, but it's part of any Islamic culture should be. But like, I noticed the Bengali have this trait of modesty, which it's really lovely to speak with Bengali people in regards to this. The theme I wanted to know, what has been your experience so far since you were born in London? What has been your experience living as a Muslim in London? Maybe you've been like to other parts of the UK, I suppose so. Can you tell us how maybe the vibe differentiates from like London to elsewhere? Can you tell us how's the vibe of being a Muslim in the UK?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say being in London is a very big blessing and probably something that we overlook quite a lot. Because, as we said, obviously London, specifically in East London, but also in other parts of London, you have this quite big Muslim community, and I think that really helps to shape kind of who we are today as well. In terms of you have this big Islamic presence as opposed to other parts of the country, for example. So naturally, like you'll have mosques around where you live, you'll be able to go to classes and stuff like that. Especially like kind of growing up, the schools that we went to were sort of majority of the school were Muslim.
Amazing.
So yeah, so it is nice, and definitely something that like a blessing that we overlook quite a lot. But alhamdulillah, I think I would say it's been very nice. It's been good to have, and I feel like it would be very different if that wasn't the case, and maybe something that probably you wouldn't like as much. I know in other areas it's a lot harder for people, I'd say, in terms of the Islamic aspect to kind of practice your religion. So
Yeah.
we're very blessed, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, honestly, without having any suspense, any brother or so far mostly brothers that have invited, which are from the UK, are really like very happy, very grateful with the philosophy of the country in regards to Islam.
Yeah.
I wanted to know a last question about the spiritual and the faith in regards to the podcast. Very important. For instance, there was Ramadan. How do you balance your professional career of being a consultant with your faith, but also your personal life? We have 5 prayers. We have to go to the mosque. Mostly us Europeans, we cannot go to Jumu'ah, for instance. What is your angle here in the UK? What can you do? What can't you do? Please tell us about it.
Good question. I would say it can be something difficult, I'd say, in terms of balancing your faith and work-wise and school, whatever it is. You probably feel like you don't have enough time, or I guess by the time you finish work and you might come home and you feel quite tired or to kind of do anything else extra. But I think it's mainly, well, from my side at least, it's just sort of knowing why you're doing it and the purpose behind it. I think when you realize that everything will the faith, when you put faith first, like everything else will be fine in that sense. And there was actually quite a nice thing that I think the same question was asked on a different podcast, like how do you balance like Quran studies, for example, with your work. And there was really like very powerful thing someone said was in terms of if you had a plate, for example, and you split it in half, like that's how people usually like they use that analogy, right? Like half of it is the dunya and the other half is sort of working for your akhirah. And then he kind of said something very powerful. He said like when you do put the sort of akhirah and your Islam first, the plate only gets bigger and it kind of puts barakah in everything else that you do. And I think I do really believe that. And I think once you do put those things first and you realize that these are the main things and this is really what I'm here for, then inevitably like you will find like you do have more times out of somewhere, like you will somehow have more time and you'll be able to do more things and you'll feel more energized. So I think it's a matter of sort of realizing what you're doing and why it's important and recognizing its importance. That will kind of help you with that.
Jazakallah khair. This is a beautiful reminder, beautiful metaphor also sharing with us. Thank you so much, Tafhim, my brother. We've been talking about the spiritual aspect of us, and I wanted to know now about the corporate side of things, because this podcast is all about giving advice to our brothers and sisters. If we rewind back time a bit to the 18-year-old version of Tafhim, can you walk us like through your academic and professional journey? What did you study? How did you get to where you are today, senior consultant at Deloitte?
Yeah, so around that age, I would have just finished my A-levels, we call it here in the UK. So for college, so you usually have high school, right, where it's like year 7 to year 11. So about 5 years, it's called secondary school. And then you have college where you do another 2 years of study, and you study your A levels. Funnily enough, my A levels, what I did, they're actually a lot different to what I guess I'm doing now. So A levels, I did biology, maths, sport, and finance. I guess finance is maybe like the closest thing, but even then, it's a lot different to probably what I'm in now, it being like sort of more IT related. So I did those. I applied for uni, but I also applied for an apprenticeship. And again, I feel like most people might know what an apprenticeship is, but if you don't, it's like a program where you study while you work. So usually big companies provide apprenticeships, and you join them on the basis that you'll get a degree at the end of the program, for example. But alongside the degree, you are an employee of that company, and you're working there just like any other employee.
Tafhim, I love that you're sharing this in this podcast because I had no idea such a existed in the UK. I thought it was only existing in France. I'm so glad you shared this. Excellent. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Oh, so you were saying it does exist in France, or it doesn't?
In France, basically, if you do your degree, whether it is an engineering school, business school, or university, if you get an apprenticeship, the company will both pay for your education and will give you a salary each month.
So that's essentially
that's the same.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. So that's actually how I started my career. So I finished my A levels. I applied for both. My initial university that I applied for, I didn't necessarily get the grades to get in, so I didn't make that. I could have there's a system they call clearing in the UK where you find other courses that they might take you on for. But I still had the offer from the apprenticeship. So it was I guess it wasn't necessarily planned. And that is, funnily enough, that wasn't actually my first choice to do that. But somehow, it worked out in my favor. I didn't get into university, so I decided to go through the apprenticeship route. And that's kind of how I started the career at the company that I am at now, was through an apprenticeship. And it happened to be in IT. Which is something I didn't necessarily study, but it was still something that I still did have an interest in it, and would have wanted to take my career sort of down that route as opposed to the other areas such as tax or audit, for example, or risk advisory, these kind of areas. But I think tech was definitely where I wanted to go, and so I applied for that. I got in and I joined as an apprentice, which was 6 years ago now, which is it feels like a long while ago. But that's how I kind of got in the first place.
We can notice already in Tafhim, our brother, that even though there might be variation in his academic journey, that he's had a solid foundation with biology, mathematics, finance. So I would really advise any brothers or sisters listening, please choose scientific type of topics because they open you very large the options in your career. While, for instance, you might be attracted to literature, philosophy at first, but then to go into a tech sector, it will be extremely hard because the basis you would have to catch up on a lot of topics. So I just wanted to say this. And Tafhim, for the apprenticeship, in France, you really have to perform a lot to convince your employer to move from an apprenticeship to actually a permanent role. And I wanted to know if you had this type of experience. How did you go through this period of maybe trying to convince your manager, I'm worth signing me as a permanent? Can you walk us through that period maybe?
So I would say it's probably somewhat similar in terms of you are part of a program, and in that program, so you'll be working as a normal employee. Along that, you are also studying for a degree. So essentially, you're doing both in one. So it can be, at times, it was very busy, very difficult, I'd say, at times, because you're juggling both work, and not only any work, this is real work with real clients, and as well as that, you're studying on the side for a full-time degree, essentially. So it was difficult, definitely at times. But having said that, you do get sort of all the support that you need, which is quite nice. So within the firm, you have sort of mentors, managers who help you sort of if you got any questions, anything to ask, any sort of time off. If you need time off to finish certain assignments, certain modules, you can request that. And there is a lot of support, I'd say, especially, being that you've just joined from college as well, and the apprentices are very, they're quite junior, right? So you do get the support that you need, which definitely helps, because there can be times times where your project work, your client work is quite heavy, quite intense, and at the same time, you've got a exam in a week, for example, so you have to revise for that. So especially in those times, I'd say like the support system that I'd say most firms have something similar as well, that helps quite a lot. And also along with that, like not only from the firm, but you're usually in a cohort of maybe like 30 people or so. So it's not just you. You're not alone. You have other people who are the same age, maybe a bit older, and they're on that same journey as you. So I think that tends to help quite a lot as well. But yeah, I'd say it was difficult. It wasn't necessarily having to please anyone. It was more so like everything you do have to pass though. So that's the main thing you do. Obviously, still have to pass your exams and get good grades for you to complete the course. But I think you definitely do have the support to help you to do that.
Tafhim, thank you so much. And because you make me remind my student years, because I was totally in the same structure of having to prepare for the exams, the workload, etc. I can totally relate. I wanted to know if there was a thesis at the end that you had to prepare for, like validating.
Yes. Yeah, there was a so that's usually in the last year, right?
For France, it's on our last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so same here. I think so we call it dissertation. So you usually have to do a dissertation in your last year, which is like a big project, usually like 15,000 words or something like that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so I think our one was around 10 to 15, I'd say. But yeah, so that was like pretty much the bulk of the final year where you had to do a project of your choice, but it had to demonstrate certain skills or certain topics, and you basically do the project and write a very, very long report on it. So yeah, that happened for us in the last year as well. And yeah, I'd definitely say that was probably the most challenging part of the entire 3 years because it was very long. You have to spend a lot of time on it. It was difficult, I'd say.
Very difficult. I can totally relate. Brothers and sisters, if you are listening and you are at that period of time, try to choose your thesis subject or dissertation subject for the ones in the UK very carefully, because it's something that you can put on your resume at first when you don't have much work experience, and it can really put you forth on the job market. If you are, I don't know, for instance, at the time I did something on data science applied to HR. And the first thing, since I didn't have much work experience, the first things they were looking at is like, can you tell us more about your thesis, etc. So try to choose very carefully your topic because it can serve you for the beginning of your career. Tafhim, what inspired you to pursue a career in consulting? What motivated you to go into this field, and what motivates you to continue in this field right now?
So yes, I am in consulting, but specifically tech, right? So I think it was more so like I was drawn to tech as like I would say, which I'll get onto in terms of why I think consulting is nice. But I think initially it was the idea of tech that I wanted to get into. And I think tech, choosing a career in tech is really good because I feel like you're kind of at the heart of solving problems or creating solutions for different clients. And that's essentially what we do, like what I do now. Obviously, we have different software development projects that you're part of a bigger team, but essentially the big picture of what you're doing is you're creating solutions for clients to help solve their problems. And especially if you get to work with sort of clients like in the public sector, so like the National Health Service or the government, you're at the heart of creating solutions that are solving like problems where you can see the actual effect of it. You see it with your own eyes. It's not necessarily about the client just making more money, but it helps improve, I don't know, like processes in the National Health Service that helps patients get treated quicker or something like that. So I think the idea of it being tech is you're part of something that is helping to solve, a bigger problem and creating the solutions. And not only that, I think especially within tech, you're surrounded by so many amazing people, like really smart people, really like people that just know so much and have great ideas. So I think that's definitely one thing like that kind of motivated me to get into tech. In terms of consulting itself, like I wouldn't say it was more so tech that I wanted to get into. Consulting, you kind of like I didn't even know what consulting was before I actually started working in consulting. And I feel like most people are like that. Like no one really. It's not something you hear of when you're in school, like as a career option. But definitely now that I am in consulting, I really do enjoy it. Mainly, I guess the people. Like you meet some amazing people of all different backgrounds from different places across the world. So it's really nice. Like you work with some amazing people, which is always nice to have. Luckily as well, consulting, like where I am, there's a lot of travel involved. I think a lot less now after COVID, but before, like there is like the opportunity to travel a lot, both nationally and internationally, which is quite nice. And I guess being young and you just started this job and you get to travel with these different places, it's always quite nice. That's something that I quite liked as well. The last thing is as funny as it sounds. I would say, like, in terms of no 2 days are the same. I think it does apply a little bit to consulting. You're always like, once you finish one project, you're working on probably something completely different. Like, the difference in those two projects can be huge, or they can be very similar, or they can be very different. And I think that's what keeps it fresh, and you're able to work on different things, which is very nice. I think now that I'm in consulting, I can see like why it's quite nice to be in it.
The theme, so that people might have a very concrete idea. Can you tell us, for instance, what it's like being in your shoes for like a day or a week? What do you do in a regular week? I know you told us that no week is the same, no day is the same. Let's say as an average type of task that you would do in a regular week. What would you do?
Maybe a day might be a week.
Excellent.
Usually, so where I'm working now, you would be part of like a bigger software development project, essentially. So you're building something for the client. Is like the bigger picture, and you'll be part of a certain team that delivers certain pieces of work as part of that overall project. And usually in these kind of big projects, the day starts with there being what we call, in like the terminology, a stand-up. So you'll have a daily stand-up with your team, and essentially what that is just a meeting in the morning. You kind of discuss what you've done yesterday, what the plan is to do today, like in terms of work, if there's any like big blockers or any problems or challenges you might face during the day, and you kind of give your update there, the same as everyone else. And that happens like daily, without a doubt, and that will be happening not only for your team but also the other teams on the project. And that's something that happens quite a lot in tech projects, for example. So you'll have a stand-up, probably about like 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes, and then usually the morning you tend to find there's a lot of calls, a lot of meetings, and usually they're to discuss any problems, like, or anything that's blocking the platform, for example, like stopping you from building a certain part of the website, or, do you know what I mean, like coding for this part of like this certain thing. So you'll have like lots of discussions with other teams, other meetings, if there's any blockers, if there's any issues, if there's any risks that need to be flagged up.
Tafhim, I have a question. Sorry, I'm less familiar with the tech branch of like the consulting firms. Is it mainly projects where you try to automate things for your clients? What type of software development type of projects do you handle for your clients? Mainly, I would say the regular ones.
Yeah, so it could be that. It could be you're building something, so new platform, a new website. But no, you're actually right. So yeah, specifically myself, I'm usually part of like the QA side of things, and QA being like quality assurance. You test a lot of parts of the website or the platform to check that it's working correctly in different situations and different scenarios, and you automate a lot of these processes. That's essentially what I would be doing specifically. So I'll have like a set of tickets that I need to complete in this week that deals with like XYZ part of the website. So I need to automate that process. Like in the day, I'll start working on that ticket, try to get as far as I can, kind of thing. And you kind of just update on that ticket if everything's going well, if there's stuff that's blocking you, if it's going to take a bit longer than expected, kind of provide that update. But essentially, yeah, I'm kind of working through the tickets that are assigned to myself through the day. And those tickets are on a bigger picture. They're helping, as you said, to automate a certain process. Or if you're part of like a development team, your tickets will be helping to create certain parts of the platform. So for example, if we think of a website like a shopping website, for example, your task might be to create like the account part of the platform where a user can log in, see their orders, see how much they've paid for this item, that item. Like your ticket for that week might be to create that part of the platform, if that makes sense. I don't know if that helps.
No, that helps. And I wanted to know, Tafhim, because you were talking about the ticketing system, which a lot of companies use. It's great for performance, to assess who's doing what and how much time, etc. I wanted to know a bit more about the competitiveness that we all know from the big four companies. Is there this sense of competitiveness also in the tech teams of consulting firms, or is it less present, you would say?
As in like across different firms?
No, across people in the same firms. Because for instance, consultants, let's say at BCG or McKinsey, there is a huge competition between them. Okay, who's going to get this client? I'm going to do everything to get this new client. Personally, it's not something I enjoy, but I wanted to know if this was also the case for tech teams like yours at Deloitte.
Probably is there, maybe not so much so visible to myself. Like I haven't necessarily seen a lot of that.
Okay, I see.
Which is nice probably. But it definitely does happen in terms of the fact that you might be bidding for a certain project. That's how, companies win work.
Yeah.
And it might be that they haven't won it, but so-and-so has won this part of work, so they'll work on it. So it's not to say it doesn't happen. I think it does happen at times, but it's just not a big thing, I'd say.
Okay.
But you can find a lot of projects where our company will be there as well as like other tech companies. So they're also on the same project for the same client. Like you're working alongside another one of the big four, for example, or BCG, or like these kind of companies. Like you're on the same client and they're also there as well. So I guess like there's that competition there where you are working alongside other competitors. So that definitely does exist, and I have seen that. But yeah, I'd say less so within the actual firm.
I learned so much things from this conversation. I love, guys, I have to say to the audience, guys, I love doing this podcast because I learned so much things about people from different countries, different fields. It's so great to feel about it. You could tell us when the thoughts of working at Deloitte crossed your mind. Is it when you were looking for an apprenticeship before, or when exactly did you think, okay, I'm going to work for Deloitte? Was it a hazard or was it a target of yours? And how did you plan to make this objective come true if this was one of yours?
It definitely came about when I was applying, whilst I was still in college, applying for different, and I applied to like a lot of different apprenticeships because, I just thought, why not? Like, if I don't get it, I don't get it, which is fine. But it doesn't hurt to like apply to as many as you can. So I applied to quite a lot, actually.
If I could just say something, because the audience might not know, it's extremely difficult to get an apprenticeship because the competition is extremely hard. So everyone, whether Tafhim, me, everyone is applying at very large because the competition is extremely hard. There's a lot of students who want a single apprenticeship. So just wanted to advise everyone on this. I pursue my friend.
No, that's fine. I would have applied to a lot of different ones as well. I knew of Deloitte, but not to that extent, like in terms of it being a big four. I just knew it's like another company, I guess. I think back then at least I speak for myself, like I never really knew the extent of these different companies or how big they are really. So it was just another one that I had applied for. At that point, it wasn't an objective to get into Deloitte specifically. It was also just to see which apprenticeships I can get into. But I think as the process went on and like some of them rejected me or some of them took me forward, then obviously it narrows down to certain ones, to the point where I think the only one that I had was Deloitte. Like I didn't have any offers from any of the other ones. Like that probably went the furthest.
Alhamdulillah.
Like a final interview. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Definitely a big blessing. Once I went through the different stages, so there was quite a few stages you have to go through.
Yeah, Tafhim, can you tell us, this was my question, this is perfect. Can you walk us, like, if you can remember, what were the different stages? Because it's renowned to be quite difficult to get into Deloitte. People might have an idea of what it was. So if you could tell us, my friend.
I would say it's probably changed a lot to when it was from myself. I would say it's probably even harder now. Initially apply like a normal application, you'd fill out details. So you do that, you'd then have to do these online tests. I think they're called like numeracy and literacy skills and situational judgment kind of thing, in terms of, in this situation, what would you do, to see how you respond to different questions, but also to test like your mathematical skills to a certain level and your English skills to a certain level. And that's usually a standard across a lot of apprenticeships. So you do that test. Obviously, if you don't pass that test, I think it ends there. But if you pass that, you're invited into the office for like an assessment center. So what they do there is, it won't be just you, there'll be other apprentices who've applied as well, and you'll get put into a group. You'll get given a task or a scenario, and you've basically got to work with the other apprentices there to come up with like a solution or whatever the scenario like requires of you. You got to work with them, and then present it back to like a board of people. So you do that. And on the same day, actually, following that, you have an interview. So this is your first interview you have with like someone's, like a director or a manager at Deloitte. And they ask you like the typical, like, why Deloitte? Why would you want a career in this particular field? So yeah.
The preparation is essential. I know that business schools, for instance, they prepare a lot the students because sometimes those assessment centers, etc., they push it very far. The behavior test, etc. The competition is so high that the schools want to prepare you for for this. I wanted to know if you got any type of preparation. Maybe you went on YouTube or anything that you did at that time.
Yeah, I think for the assessment center, definitely. And even for the online tests, you'll find online, like, even if you search in like some random like online
Yeah.
tests, yeah, you'll find like similar kind of questions, and that will definitely help you. But for the assessment center, yeah, I would say I definitely did like try to do some research, especially on Deloitte itself, like what Deloitte is, what are some of their values, the company itself, like the different departments they have. Because following the assessments, and obviously I had an interview, and in the interview they ask you these kind of things in terms of why do you want to work here as opposed to anywhere else, you know? So I'd say definitely do your research for where you're applying to, and I think the rest of it is more quite general in terms of some of it. I'd say you can't necessarily prepare for. It's quite hard because you don't know what you're going to be given on the day.
Yeah.
But I guess just to like be prepared in the fact that you know you're going to be given certain like scenarios, I guess, or you're going to be expected to do certain things. You can't obviously prepare for it 100%, but you go in knowing, okay, I'm going to get given a scenario, and I'm expected to, or they'll see how I navigate through it. So I guess just being ready for the actual thing, not necessarily the details, but being ready for the fact that I know I'm going to get questioned or observed at how I do, how I perform, how I interact with others. So that kind of general thing. But yeah, as for the tests, I'm very sure even now there's probably even more resources online that we can check.
Yeah. As our brother said, there's as much as you can prepare. They really want to, for instance, in the behavioral type of assessments, they want to see if you have leadership, if you're more an observer, if you have an analyst type of position. They're also looking for those personality traits, I would say.
Yeah.
Tafhim, my brother, I wanted to know, because you are a tech profile, and the tech, you mentioned that there are very smart people, etc. Why is that? Because people in tech have to learn every day, every week, because otherwise you lose pace. You lose pace. You are not competitive anymore. It's a field where you have to always keep on learning. And you mentioned this in your introduction. If you could tell us maybe some platforms or resources that maybe you could recommend our brothers and sisters to keep on learning, or maybe to learn from scratch. Either way, some platforms that you thought could be useful for our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one thing I definitely say is the resource is out there. Like, if you want to learn, it's out there. You just have to go and get it. Like, it's not a case of there's no resource. Like, believe me, like, there's so many things to watch. Even just YouTube alone, you can learn so much.
YouTube is my number one, personally.
Is it? That's good. Yeah, for me, it's helped quite a lot as well. And you'd think, like, I feel like it's probably the last place people would look, but I think it should be the first. YouTube, like, there's so many things on YouTube, and you'll find a lot of it is for free as well. So a lot of courses, like, if you were to do them in person, they'll cost, and there's a price to pay, like, even for booking the exam, for example. But YouTube, there is definitely a lot. Along with YouTube, there's also like other websites, such as even ones that I use till this day to study for like certain qualifications. There's Udemy. I don't know if you've heard of Udemy. It's quite a good one. LinkedIn Learning, there's also, and I'm sure there is many more. But even like just as a starting off point, YouTube will keep you busy for a long while, basically.
For a long time. And I wanted to tell everyone, guys, for instance, last year, I wanted to know more about corporate finance. I had no structure. I love to learn things that I don't know about. Like, for instance, I will end up in a conversation. Some guy tells something that I have no idea what he's talking about. I will go home, try to research stuff and catch up on what he was saying. For instance, on YouTube, I followed a course on corporate finance by MIT, which was like 10 hours long for free on YouTube. And it was great. It was like, I think it was an Asian teacher, a beast in mathematics. He was killing it. And I really recommend it's free. It's very accessible. We live in an era where everything is really accessible, very, very fast, very efficiently. So rather than spending time on TikTok watching 5 seconds videos where you will not get as much content, you would rather be on YouTube and invest in your future. It's very important. This was my uncle type of advice. My brother Tafhim, it's quite stressful to go through all those steps at such a young age. I wanted to know, how did you handle it? But also if you had an advice you would give to the audience, which, it's quite stressful for them. Now I think you would go in an interview like very easily. You handle clients all the time. So I just wanted to know if you have an advice for them to go through this phase of interview stress, going in an assessment. How would you advise our brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I'd say, even myself, when I went to the interviews, like, I don't know, I probably thought to myself, like, I wouldn't get it, for example, or I just had that kind of of
Yeah.
mindset where I thought I'll do it for the sake of it, but I don't know if I'll actually get it. Which, yeah, I would say like it's again, it sounds quite funny, but you do kind of have to believe in yourself because no one else is gonna believe in. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, who else will? Kind of thing.
Mm,
And you have to understand that if you are at these interviews, if you are at these assessment centers, like, you've made it that far.
exactly.
Everyone's got something they can bring to the table, right? And the fact that you are there alone, like, even just that is a big thing in itself. Yeah, again, as funny as it sounds, like, you do have to have that belief in yourself.
I wanted to know, Tafhim, because we're running out of time
Sure.
almost. Do you see a rise in the number of Muslims along you at Deloitte and in consulting firms, but also for your clients, clients which can afford Deloitte? Deloitte is quite expensive, an expensive consulting firm. So I wanted to know, among the clients you face, among the people you see coming on board at Deloitte, do you see a rise in the number of Muslim professionals, or do you see that maybe we're lagging a bit behind? We should do something more about it.
Yeah, no, I definitely see a huge rise in that, and I think it will only
Alhamdulillah.
continue going. Yeah, alhamdulillah, definitely. And it's really nice to see, because I remember when I joined, even in my cohort, there was, from myself, there was only two other Muslim boys. So there was three of us, maybe, in the group of 100, maybe.
What the
Yeah,
hell?
crazy. But so there was that about 6 years ago. Last year, every year there's like a new cohort, right? So we had a session where we were facilitating one of the sessions for the new cohort. So I go in there, and then it was on a Friday, and basically where it was, there's no mosque near the place, like where it was being hosted. So we had to do Jummah Salah in the actual like building, and like
Amazing.
someone from the staff like sort of led Jummah and did the khutbah. So basically, this same Jummah happened 6 years ago, and it was just three of us. It was myself and two other brothers. This last year it happened, and alhamdulillah, there was, I would say, at least 35 people, mix of brothers and sisters.
This is
Yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy. And like, I myself like had the same reaction. I was like, and it made me look back and think, wow, it's changed so much, and the rise in number has been amazing. I think definitely it'll continue to grow only. And again, it's a thing, like, it's nice to see, like you see, and if they can come in and they see like people like ourselves who are a bit senior, they're able to relate, and they feel like they can speak with us. When you see like that representation, it does help, and it definitely inspires other people to join as well. So I do think it will continue growing, inshallah, and I think it's a good thing if it does. So hopefully that's the case. But yeah,
It's a super thing, Tafhim. And
yeah,
you said something which is very important, inspiration. Because someone who just lands at Deloitte might be a kid just being like an intern or something. If he
yeah,
sees an associate or a partner at Deloitte and he's a Muslim leading prayer, I would tell myself, oh my God, I have so much chances of being there one day. And
Mhm.
it's so important for people to have this hope, to tell themselves they have made it there with their values, with their education. And it also sets the path to stay true to yourself. You can succeed there and stay true to your values. So it's such a very good word you said, inspiration, because diversity in the workplace is so important. And there is something, I mentioned this with another brother who works at Deutsche Bank, the Deloitte Muslim Network. Can you tell us more about it? Are you familiar with this network? Can you tell us what type of events they organize? Maybe it can inspire brothers which are in the US, Canada, Australia to
Yeah,
do such type of thing.
definitely. And I'd definitely say, if no one's kind of seen it, to definitely check it out. I think we've got a LinkedIn page. But I'm involved in terms of like organizing a lot of the events, and alhamdulillah, we're quite active. We try to do a lot, and that's a mixture of stuff within the workplace and stuff without like outside of the workplace. So within the workplace, alhamdulillah, like, we have a prayer room, and we try to keep that, like, open up to everyone, make sure everything's okay in there, give other people support in terms of the network, like put on events for our own employees, whether that's social events, so like going for food, or like doing activities
Amazing.
outside of work. And I think that's a very important one, just to mention, because you will find, especially when you start work, it might be quite a shock to some people, like the culture, because the culture can be, it's very like alcohol, drink heavy,
Yeah.
you'll see a lot of parties going on where there's alcohol present, and you've probably never even seen that till you've started work before in your life. So it's good to provide an alternative to those people, to say, if they don't go to those events, maybe do something like
Very
with
true.
the Islamic network. So there's those events. There's also events where I get like Muslim partners, Muslim senior people to kind of share their story in front of like a audience and allow them to ask them questions. So
This is amazing. I
it's
love
very,
this.
yeah, alhamdulillah. I think again, it's a testament to the people that work here as well. I think they've done a great job and they're very active. It only happens because of them driving it, Alhamdulillah, they're amazing people to work with. It sort of ranges a lot from that to doing events with other. We actually have like a Big Four Muslim network event we do every year.
No
So with
way.
yeah, it's actually really nice. We try to change the theme of it every year. So I think the most recent one was diversity. So we kind of had people from different backgrounds give their like experience of how they dealt with Ramadan and Eid, the stuff that they might do in their cultures, so different parts of the world, followed by like we had food from different parts of the world, which is quite nice. So we try to, not only within our own firm, but also with other firms outside. Social and doing stuff where we can speak to people that are much senior, and also doing stuff that is like more on the educational side. So stuff about Islamic finance.
Excellent. Very good.
Stuff to do with like zakat, for example. Like we try to hold sessions that will help our network be educated on those matters as well.
I saw that, for instance, Wahed, which I think Wahed. It's
Yeah.
I saw that, for instance, Wahed, which is for the audience, Tafhim knows that, but it's basically a huge Islamic investments firm, one of the top 3 biggest in the world. There's, for instance, they have like Khabib, Pogba, which are also big figures to market their product.
Yeah.
And for instance, they intervene in, I have seen in LinkedIn, they intervene in KPMG headquarters to promote their products and raise the Islamic finance culture among the consultants at KPMG in the UK. I thought it was beautiful because we are preparing the future also. It's honestly the vibe in the UK. When I hear our brother Tafhim speaking, it makes me so happy because it's such a hope for the rest of the country, such a role model. I say it all the time, but it's just beautiful to listen to all the initiatives taking place. I really want everyone to partake. I want to invite the maximum people from the UK so that it can inspire the rest of the Western countries to follow this path, because it's the way to go. It's excellent. So congratulations everyone in London, Tafhim, all the brothers, sisters which are partaking in every little thing. It's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything, Tafhim. Before we finish, I would like to ask if, you've been part of any charity work, anything, any small step, any small effort can make a difference. And I want our listeners to also be more engaged to help the community. My best friend, he said it to me once, ended up launching this podcast. I want also to pursue with this advice. Anything that you've done recently, it can be a small thing that just might give an idea to another brother, sister of doing more charity.
So I try to do as much as I can as well. So I actually volunteer with Islamic Relief. I think they're also like
the number one.
Yeah, in a lot of other countries as well. So alhamdulillah, like for example, the Ramadan that just went, they have this thing called the cake campaign, where you kind of we basically delivered cakes to people who bought them, and that money goes towards Syria, for example.
MashaAllah.
But even something like that, like the action itself is just, you're delivering a cake, right? But I think the impact that it has and the bigger picture, and it being in Ramadan as well, like I don't think you should underestimate the impact and the reward that you will get from it, inshallah. But yeah, I'd say there's definitely a lot of initiatives like within these charities as well. But yeah, for myself, like I try to do as much as I can, especially in Ramadan. Like it was a good time to do it. I guess other times of the year we might be a bit busy, but yeah, I try to do whatever I can. And even if you can't do that, I'd say definitely like just donate as well. That's something that we might not do as often, or we think we can just do it in Ramadan and not other parts of the year. But even your donations like will go a long way. So there's always something to give, And I think it's like very important that you said it as well. Like even the fact that you're doing something like this, which is an amazing initiative you have, but it's giving back. And we're very like, we tend to be focused on a lot quite ourselves, and it's easy to kind of get lost in like I want to do this by by a certain age, or this is my goal. But the higher you go, and then alhamdulillah, the more successful that we will get, we should sometimes look back and try to help and bring others along the way as well, and try to inspire them as well. So definitely, I think it's that idea of giving back. No matter how far you are, you should always definitely look back and try to give back as well, I'd say.
That's beautiful, my brother. Honestly, couldn't have said it better. And just as a last thing I would like to say, I am really a huge fan of Islamic Relief. For me, they're the number one, also by the number of actions they do worldwide. Honestly, God bless them for the brilliant work they do. For anyone who's listening who might be in France, if you would like to donate to Islamic Relief, I have a little tip, because, Tafhim, France is very racist. So basically, Islamic Relief is not implemented. They're implemented everywhere, but not in France, obviously.
Okay.
So what I do, and I advise every French listener, you can donate via Germany, okay, because Germany is part of the European Union. So I go in the Islamic Relief Germany, I can donate with euro currency. So I would strongly advise for that. They're doing amazing work. It's fully transparent. They have reports on everything. You can check them out. Amazing work. So yeah, that was all for us, everyone. Thank you so much, Tafhim. Jazakallah.
Thank you, Shaheen. Barakallah Fik. Thank you very much for having me, and I think the project that you're doing is very beautiful. May Allah put a lot of barakah in it, inshallah.
My brother, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been a pleasure having you today on the show. Thank you for everyone listening. And I will leave two things. First, I will leave the LinkedIn page of the Deloitte Muslim Network so that you can check what type of events they organize, which Tafhim mentioned. But also, I will leave Tafhim LinkedIn. If you have any advice, etc., Tafhim has very kindly accepted that if you would like some advice, he can maybe respond to your questions. So I would like to thank him again for this. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today, everyone. And we'll see you on the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Tafhim.
Wa alaikum salam.
That's all for today's episode, guys. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you have any feedback or suggestion for future episodes, please reach out to us on our social media channels. And don't forget, please, to subscribe, rate and review our show on your favorite podcast platform. This would really help us a lot. Until next time, we'll stay inspired, stay curious, and keep changing the game.